Welcome back to the Sports Complex on a Friday. Lot to get into in the next hour and a half before we give you up to the Rangers. We got some Dallas Cowboys sound from the end of training camp getting ready for their game against the Seahawks on Saturday. We're going to be talking to Eddie Cross from Fight Night, talking about the big UFC 292 that is happening and all the news across the MMA world. Sark talked to the media today before their second scrimmage. We'll get into that. We also will have some 512 Friday for you, a couple different stories. Of course, Patrick's big fat poll of the day, and a whole lot more coming up for you if you want to join the conversation. 512-337-3776. That's 512-337-3776 is the Specs text line, how you can play along with us here on the Sports Complex today. This has been it's been a long day so far. Not a bad day. It started off a little bad, but I want to give you a frame of mind of how my day started. So if today I seem off at any point, you can say, okay, we know where it came from the beginning, which is I did yesterday was cleaning up and trying to get, you just did laundry, got some things ready for the weekend, and doing laundry, clean everything up. And so this morning, get up, ready to attack the day, got an 11 o'clock meeting. So you're just trying to get things ready, get stuff before I get to work, doing some stuff on the computer, go take a shower, open the shower, completely forget that I had washed the towels, which meant I'm now soaking wet, no towels except in my room. And I'm going to have to make the decision of how wet am I about to get this house. And I've now allowed to put in myself, well, guess who gets to clean the bathroom floor this morning? That was not planned. That is how my day started off. Have you ever forgotten the towel? It's a very annoying moment. Take a nice shower in the morning. You're like ready to attack the day. And as soon as that shower curtain opens up, and you realize your mistake, that there's no towel in that bathroom. It's a devastating moment. If you watched the Philadelphia Eagles versus Cleveland Browns last night, you saw the scary moment with Moro Ojomo. All reports, the statement put out today by the Philadelphia Eagles is that they just took a lot of precaution. He has suffered a concussion, but he should be okay and have a full recovery. But they were taking an abundance of caution. So if you watched that last night and did not follow up on how Moro Ojomo is doing, former Texas Longhorn, he's doing okay. They say it's okay. It's a concussion, but they want to take full precaution with anything that's a head injury. And I think this is going to be more of a common theme you see this year, is that they are going to very much try to take very special care of anything to make sure nothing gets worse. And I it's partly the, what you saw with the Bills last year. And then it's partly with Tua, I think, too, where they say, well, maybe if we took a little bit better care of his concussion, that story wouldn't have gotten as big. Because we all know the NFL, they care about their players a little bit, but they care about their money more. And so the story is that they don't want to get out. If you're keeping score, Michael Brantley did his second rehab assignment with Sugar Land, played 7 innings in the outfield, went 1-4 with an RBI single. Looked okay, got contact, playing well. It is minor league pitching, so you'd like him to do a little bit better, but he is playing in the field. He's playing there. This is a hope that the Astros are going to be able to get Michael Brantley back possibly before that Rangers series at the beginning of September. Maybe that's too soon, but we'll see. That would be my guess of when they might want to try and bring him back is around the beginning of the month. I believe early September is the first Monday in September is going to be when the Astros play the Rangers for that last series. So I could believe they could pull them up for that one. It's going to be a big one. They're in a big one this weekend as well, playing the Mariners. Mariners only 3.5 games back from the Astros, so that is going to be a big game. This big series this weekend to watch. Yanier Diaz actually going to be playing first base today. They put Singleton at DH and Yanier Diaz at first base. I've been wanting to see this, if Yanier Diaz can play some first base defensively, because if Brantley comes back, that DH spot becomes different. And with Maldonado there, it's just a very big – there's a lot of juggling that Dusty Baker's going to have to do, because Yanier Diaz is one of the hottest bats the Astros have going. And if you want to put Maldonado behind the plate for the pitchers – and Michael Brantley is back, so, him or Jordan is going to be in the field, and one's going to be the DH. I don't know where that leaves Yanier Diaz, but we know with Jose Abreu currently out with injury, all right, let's put him at first and see if he can do it, because you may switch out if Jose Abreu doesn't get going. Yanier Diaz may come in, play at some at first, play some at catcher, and just move around a little bit. But we'll see how he does tonight playing against the Mariners. And if you're following USA men's basketball for FIBA World Cup, that starts at the end of the month or early September is when they could play their first actual game. They were doing a warm-up. They're now 4-0. They beat Greece 108-86. Anthony Edwards, your leading scorer in that game. All right. let's get on to some Cowboys. And the Cowboys spoke to the media. They're done with training camp in Oxnard. They are coming back to Dallas. So a lot of some of the players, we got some Dak sound, we have some Dan Quinn sound, and a little bit of Mike McCarthy, because I want to illustrate a point that I've talked about before about how I just don't see Mike McCarthy as the leader of this team right now. And I know they keep saying Dak Prescott's going to be the leader. And Dak Prescott sounds more like a leader in these clips than Mike McCarthy does, to be honest. But when we heard Mike McCarthy come out after the first preseason game and say he was so swamped by play calling duties that he couldn't really do anything else, he couldn't watch how the players were performing, he couldn't watch the defense, it makes you wonder a little bit more about what Mike McCarthy is going to be able to do this season, if he's going to be able to handle the head coaching duties. And is he more or less head coach in name only? And in reality, he handles the offense, Dan Quinn handles the defense. But, of course, a big story that came out of camp at the end of camp was the fights that broke out and Micah Parsons swinging punches and everybody having to tell Micah Parsons, fist versus helmet, helmet's going to win. But I'm going to play you two clips of Mike McCarthy and Dan Quinn talking about fights. And I believe it'll further illustrate my point of why I believe one of them is in line to be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. And I don't have a lot of faith in the other one. And in reality, Dan Quinn may be saving Mike McCarthy's job, but I don't know how long that'll last. Here's Mike McCarthy when they asked him about the fights in practice and what he thought going forward.
No, I mean it's definitely part of a competitive environment. I mean I'm all for the fighting, but as long as you don't cross the line, I think really the message to the team is you just can't throw punches. I mean we all understand what the rules of the game are. I mean so you throw a punch, you're out of the game. You're 48-man roster. On game day, so you can't ask your team to be super competitive and push the envelope and not to think you're going to have situations where we're crossing the line. And definitely was provoked by the media yesterday, but we overcame it, and we only got two guys thrown out of the game. So no, but you can't throw punches, and that's the biggest message that came out of yesterday. So I'm all for it. I think a good, healthy skirmish is healthy. Conflict is good. It's all part of how we train. But we don't want the BS and any of that stuff that's unnecessary. And at the end of the day, you just can't throw a punch.
So that's Mike McCarthy addressing the fights. I don't care. I like a fight. But you can't throw a punch. That's Mike McCarthy addressing fights. That's it. It's not terrible. He's not playing into the narrative that there's divide between offense and defense. He's not that there's any problems in camp. It's just fights, and that's good. Get that energy up, right? He's fine. Let me play you Dan Quinn when he was asked the same question, basically, about the fights at camp, and tell me if you can hear the difference like I can. If you're hearing the same thing I'm hearing, of one of these guys sounding like a leader and the other guy sounding not so much.
Regarding the fights, the topic I discussed with them yesterday, you really are trying to find an edge. And sometimes when you're finding it, you have to go off it to see how far I can really, push it to go. So you have to fall off the cliff some to find where your edge is. But those are the moments that you do it in practice to find, not just fighting. I'm saying the real speed, the real competitiveness. We do have to take care of one another. And at the end of it, that's our bond to one another, and we push each other to get better. And the old phrase of, iron sharpening iron, I think that's so true for a football team in a training camp setting to say, we are on that space together, but can we push one another to really see how good we can get? And so moments like that, when you go over, that's fighting. You fell off the cliff. You went to the edge too far. But there was lots of plays yesterday that were really competitive, going as hard as you can, safely done. And those moments are important too, because that's where you find where I can set that edge too of how I compete and how I go. And I think if you asked all the players, they would agree that days like that where the competition is really at its most intense in a controlled environment, we all need that. And I thought that was a good example of that yesterday. But getting back to your original question of it, it's something that you have to talk about every day. It's not, okay, we just add one player, add one thing. I think the standard and the energy that a team can play with, that's at the top of the pile, the top of the list, and you had better make it part of our identity. So every time our friends and family and fans watch us play, they say, these guys get it on, and you can't take a day off from that.
There you go. All right. So we have Mike McCarthy His answer is don't throw punches. That's what we got out of it. And Dan Quinn says, you have to play on the edge. You have to be on the edge, the verge of as much effort and intensity as you can put in. And sometimes to find that edge, you have to go over. And that's when those fights happen. So it's an okay learning experience because you're going to learn where that edge is. That's Dan Quinn. Finding the edge, finding the intensity within your team. And Mike McCarthy, don't throw punches. Don't hit nobody. That's the difference between these coaches. One of them makes me want to play football. One of them says, don't throw punches. He doesn't, there's nothing in that. He says, yeah, fights are good. He doesn't say, hey, man, we got to get to the edge. It's just, if you want to tell me who makes me want to believe that they're ready to be a head coach of a football team and get a football team to play, look, I can see the text like, they put the same ideas across, sure. But this is about being a champion. This isn't somebody walking into your office and says, hey, can you knock out these 5 reports for me? Or somebody trying to make you and understand why those reports are important, why you have to get them done. You have to understand why these things are necessary. Dan Quinn tells you why these are necessary. That's why he has a defense that believes in him. That's why he has a defense. That's why the media talks about how people want to play for Dan Quinn, and the players have to tell the media how they want to play for Mike McCarthy, because no one believes that you want to play for Mike McCarthy. He's a decent play caller. We're going to see how his play calling goes. I got a clip we're going to play in a second from Dak Prescott talking about his play calling. I'm not questioning his play calling, but is he a head coach or an offensive coordinator? That's the question. Because if he's an offensive coordinator, fine, but he can't be running a team and making the most important decisions and leading you into battle if he's just a glorified OC, if he's just a play caller now. That's the question for me. Here's Dan Quinn talking about his young players in camp. Shouts out, they ask him about Mazi Smith. They ask him about just the young players and how they're developing and how they learned in camp. Here's Dan Quinn talking about the young players on defense that are going to be the next generation of Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for the line of scrimmage players, it's the big guys, it's the pass rushers. The game is different with pads. And so now that we're pushing to see, yes, that's it, examples from a period of a 9-on-7, a padded practice to say, that's this technique, that's the one that you have to go with. And so we keep trying to find those windows, find the moments, not just for Mazi, but I think for all of the front 7, it's Demo. And in a lot of ways, I've been really proud of Damone Clark. He didn't have a training camp to go through last year, and to see the two of them together, I texted them both last week. I felt their energy, I felt their speed on the field in the game, and I think that's kind of a cool thing to have. I know they're not in the same class, but they're both learning some things in this camp together because of Damone not going through that together. So those players with pads, that's stuff to go. I've seen in the spring there's some hesitation when you're not sure, and so when you see the speed come out, now as a coach I know the hesitation's gone. And I've seen things not happen way more because of hesitation than speed. And so when guys can really go and really, have the freedom to run and play and hit, that's the stuff that lights me up. And we'll see more of that as we're going, although, we're leaving Oxnard. There's another moments next week. And I never felt like that's where your development stops at any player, just because you're leaving a training camp setting. Like, I'm hopeful that we'll say, man, by November, we're a lot better than we were in August. By December, we're better than we were in September. And I think if we keep pushing the guys in that space, we will get better.
Dan Quinn there talking to the media after leading camp about the young players, and I love it. This is what you want to see in camp, and he brings up the point. You don't get enough in pads practices, but when you're doing them against your team and you can kind of run your speed and get things and slow it down for them enough so that they can learn, okay, this is why we're doing these things. This is where I need to be in this moment, and slow it down and then gradually speed it up for this team. That's how you can start to build. And what he says, it's lose the hesitation. When in any sport you play, that natural reaction, that natural, just instinctual reaction is so important to take your game to that next level. And in the NFL, the best players, they just had that all the time. We talk about certain DBs that are like that. Troy Polamalu is one of those guys that is a Hall of Famer because there's zero hesitation ever. Everything he did, he knew what was happening, and his teammates said that he talked to God because he knew where he was going at all times. And that's what you talk about is that hesitation. Now, the young guys are not there yet, but you have to kind of get hit and get used to that kind of play. So it's nice to see that the young players are stepping up. He gets a shout out to Demo there, that he is going to be there, and Damone Clark as well. One other clip we want to play from Dan Quinn is talking about Deron Bland and his step up, kind of helping out. And I'll mention too, they ask about Kelvin Joseph, and he doesn't get this response. So we can see where Kelvin Joseph is. Deron Bland going to be a much bigger part of this defense. Here's Dan Quinn talking about Deron Bland.
Yeah, that's a great point. We're talking about Deron. It probably refers, if I just go back a step, you hope by November the player is better than they were in August. And I think Deron Bland lived that. Not to say he wasn't doing well, but we were sprinkling in some nickel. We were playing him outside, but sprinkling that in. And so then a little bit more, then a little bit more, then a little bit more. And so when he was called upon in his first call, he really responded. And this offseason, we've done him 2 spots again to say nickel and outside. And so he's a really valuable guy for us. He is a wolf in sheep's clothing. The guy is an absolute competitor to his core, and he is really cool under pressure. The moments were never too big. Last year, I can remember Jordan being injured in a pregame and said, Bland, you're going to be up and we're going to go. Okay. It wasn't like, what are you talking about? And so that was a good sign for me to know that he wasn't just acting cool. Like, he was prepared. He knew if that moment came, he would be ready to deliver, and he did. I'm not certain. I think he might have made an interception in the game, in his first game to start. And so when you have guys like that are really prepared, but that type of competitor, I thought he's kind of one of the guys on our team that really, maybe they don't get all the news and attention, but they are really important about what we do.
Yeah, and I mean, Dan Quinn goes on there as Dan Quinn at talking at the end of training camp, and he does go on to talk about Jordan Lewis and him recovering and how great that is. He talks about, of course, Micah Parsons at another level. We know that DeMarcus Lawrence has had a great camp. So there's a lot of things happening right now that would tell you this defense for the Cowboys is poised to do big things. Now, can you stay healthy? Can you get the plays right? Talk about Leighton Vander Esch playing at a high level. Everybody seems amped up for this defense. But the questions start coming to the offense, and it's not just Mike McCarthy. It's also Dak Prescott. That's where the questions lie. He threw too many interceptions last year. It was an anomaly. But can it stay an anomaly, or is it a trend going the other direction? Dak Prescott will talk to the media as well. He talked about Mike McCarthy and the play calling of Mike McCarthy, how it's a little bit different and how it's starting to gel, how they're feeling about it, working in camp, even though he's not really taking preseason reps, how he's getting used to Mike McCarthy calling plays. Here's Dak Prescott.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes starts with the communication. Starts with the communication that we had way back in the spring, with the way that he installed plays, with the way that he detailed the plays just in the installation of understanding the purpose within each play. So as those plays come in, a lot of that's already been talked about, whether, hey, this is a shot, but if it's not there, get to the completion, or this is a ball out play, get the ball out of your hands, get it to these playmakers. So just not only with the play calling, but with the personnel, just different people we're putting on the field together. I've got a great idea, and then just being able to be on the headset in this first game in the preseason, and just the tempo and the pace that he's getting them in, it's exciting. And so, the more that I get to see that, and the more we talk throughout the week, I think that we'll be in the same realm of the mindset of when a play's coming in, knowing exactly what's coming, what's expected, and allowing us to play fast and play to our strengths.
So there we go. That Dak Prescott saying he's getting him in fast, which I know he said he was overwhelmed, but he apparently is calling him pretty fast, which you're going to take Dak's word on that. I'll take his word on it. That he's calling those plays, he's getting them in, he's handling his business as a play caller. He was asked in a little bit later if it was better or worse than Kellen Moore, and, he didn't want to throw Kellen Moore under the bus, understandably. That's still his friend. So, he says, look, it's different, but Kellen Moore was doing it too. So not really what you get out of this after you get both questions is not a ton of change, but Mike McCarthy is not inept in play calling. He's able to handle play calling. He's doing it just fine. And as they continue to grow, there will be some, I'm sure, learning experiences between Dak and Mike McCarthy, but he's on the headset so he can hear him. So there's just going to be some in-game things of maybe, not necessarily agreeing with play calls. That'll happen. Dak Prescott also spoke on Jake Ferguson, Dalton Schultz leaving in free agency. The Cowboys need to have that. Dalton Schultz was a security blanket for Dak Prescott. So that he wants another tight end. Here's Dak Prescott on Jake Ferguson, who seems to be leading to be the starting tight end for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I think he's there. I think he's close to becoming a big-time guy. I mean, as far as a playmaker, he's there. Just the way in what he stepped in and he did what was asked for him last year, and just the limited amount of reps to the role he's taken on coming into this season, being the guy, being a tight end, being a big-time tight end, being where I need him to be, communicating his ass off, being on the same page, knowing what I expect of him, what the offense expects of him, being a great blocker, going back to his college days, something that you knew he could do, but really putting it all together, and then you see him make a great catch in that preseason game, a back shoulder, and I think that just shows you that, hey, you throw it to this guy, he wants to make the play and he expects to make the play, and I think that's where he takes this next step from just a playmaker to becoming a big-time player in this league.
There's Dak Prescott talking about Jake Ferguson. You can tell. He says, they asked him, is he ready to take the next step? Is he ready to be the guy? And Dak Prescott says, oh, yeah. No, he's ready. So we see Jake Ferguson stepping up there. There's a couple other positions that you're worried about. He says Tony Pollard's doing great, but there's one more clip I want to play you that they did a little bit in preseason. And I'm going to be curious to see if they do this in the regular season. Because with all the new rule changes, kind of protecting players more, giving a little bit more benefit of the doubt, trying to limit plays where someone really gets their head taken off. They played some packages in the game with Deuce Vaughn and KaVontae Turpin in the lineup. Two very big playmakers, two guys that are hard to keep an arm on, keep wrangled up, and if you let them in space, who knows what can happen. And instead of playing them separately, putting them together and kind of messing with defenses that you may have big guys out there to go play against Brandon Cooks and CeeDee Lamb, but now we're going to stick in two littler guys and let's see what they can do. Here's Dak Prescott talking about what can happen when you have Deuce Vaughn and KaVontae Turpin in the lineup at the same time.
I mean, the height doesn't really matter. I mean, I understand you don't want to – I mean, when I go to throw, I mean, that just goes back into quarterback school or the time that I spend in training of always changing up your targets to throwing into the net or whatever it may be. As you see a target, you're hitting that target, whether it's high, whether it's low, whether you got to put it up in the air for, you got to jump or back shoulder. A lot of that just comes naturally and then within the practice of the game. So, but when you're on the field with those two guys, for me, it is get it to their hands as fast as I can. And realize when they have a mismatch on the field that's in benefit for them, and put them in space that a lot of guys aren't going to be able to tackle them in space. So that's a great package that we have, and we'll continue to build off of it.
It's a really interesting package with Deuce Vaughn and KaVontae Turpin, because I feel like a lot of teams are going to drop back into more of a zone to try and just make sure that they don't get slip past, trying to make sure you have a backup plan. So this may be a package that on a 3rd and 5 or 6, when you go, man, we just need 6 yards. If we put these two guys in, they have to spread out enough that we can probably find a little space for one of these guys to pick up a 3rd and 4, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 6, something like that. That may be a weird little package, and no pun intended, but a weird little package of two guys that don't seem like they be NFL players because of their size, that may be able to come into a game and really make a difference on not even big plays, not even needing to break the house down, but if they can basically come across the middle, find a space in a zone, because people are worried that two of these playmakers are on the field that are very elusive guys, and maybe back off a little bit to try and not get beat. You may be able to find a space to get 4, 5, 6 yards, and those guys are then just going to have to hold on to the ball as they get ragdolled by whoever defender comes and catches them. But I think that's something that could be interesting to see if they try and use them instead of in a massive, hey, let's try and make a big play, which you can do with them separately, but together really trying to push a defense's boundaries of, are you going to really try and play man and try and play one-on-one with two amazing playmakers who are both very elusive and both, just very quick? It's an interesting idea, and if it works, it's going to look really cool and great, but you got to hold on to that ball because they're going to come after you at that point. All right. let's move over. Big fat poll of the day yesterday. We asked you, I've forgotten the big fat poll of the day yesterday, guys. This is, we get too far into it. The big fat poll of the day yesterday, I will tell you the results of that in just a minute, but I believe it was Mike McCarthy. It was which NFL coach is on the hot seat. Sorry, guys. Which NFL coach is on the hot seat, the biggest hot seat going into the season? You guys voted for Mike McCarthy. I'm not sure if he's on the biggest. I think Brandon Staley probably is still on the biggest hot seat, but I put Mike McCarthy up there because I don't think he's going to finish. I don't think he's finishing the season as a Cowboys head coach. So he's definitely on one. But that may just be me. Jerry Jones doesn't normally like to do that. But considering as a head coach and waiting in Dan Quinn, it may be easier this year. Let's get today's big fat poll of the day.
Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the Day on the Horn.
Big fat poll of the day. We're going to play some Sark audio before their second scrimmage of the Texas Longhorns. And he talks a little bit about it in his presser. We'll play that audio for you in a little bit. But I want to know, because these guys are getting playing time right now, and people are fighting for depth chart position, which Longhorn freshman will have the biggest impact this season? 512-337-3776. 512-337-3776 is the Specs text line. How you can text us in. Which Longhorn freshman will have the biggest impact this season? Is it an Anthony Hill, Liana Lafau at linebacker? Jonte Cook come in? Does he get some playing time at wide receiver? CJ Baxter, does he come in? Sark talks about running backs. Does CJ Baxter take that room? Does he earn it? Does he go get it if Jonathan Brooks can't take it from him? Does CJ Baxter take it? Malik Muhammad, defensive back, does he step in? You got Colton Vasek, Sadir Mitchell on the D-line. A bunch of offensive linemen. If they get in the starting rotation, they're top 5. Jaden Chapman, Peyton Kirkland, Trevor Gooseby, Andre Kojo. Any of those guys could be big. And, man, if you want to, throw in Arch. I'm not saying Arch is going to have it. I don't think Arch plays this year, and I don't want him to. If Arch plays this year, something's gone wrong. But which Longhorn freshman will have the biggest impact this season? Text us in 512-337-3776. When we come back, Eddie Cross from Fight Night is going to be talking about the big UFC 292, what's happening in the world of MMA. There's lawsuits, there's people coming back, there's gimmick promotions, all of that coming up here on the Sports Complex on the Horn, 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and at hornfm.com.
Nice to be here.
Well, Eddie, so big fight happening this weekend for UFC. Some really good fights. A lot of guys, when you look up the people who have won fight of the night, there's a lot on this card. The main event. We'll start off with the main event.
Yeah,
Sean
the main
O'Malley
event
versus Aljamain
Sean
Sterling.
O'Malley versus Aljamain Sterling is basically a movie plot waiting to happen. It's basically you're watching a movie. You've got the under-respected champion who's done nothing but have like the longest win streak in bantamweight history and have the most title defenses consecutively in bantamweight history, going up against Dana White's chosen one, Sean O'Malley, who's 16-1-1, came up on Dana White's Contender Series, just knocking people out, putting up highlight after highlight, and now it's kind of turned into this big star with his own podcast and lots of pink hair and pink Lamborghinis and hanging out with questionable rappers.
Questionable rappers.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, this is a big step because he has been set up to take this route, and we know Aljamain Sterling has basically he's the most in bantamweight, most title defenses in a row in bantamweight history. It's only 3, but it's still the most. He's killing it right now. And then they say he's beaten 4 of the top 5 contenders, and the 5th one he doesn't want to fight because they're like brothers, so they don't want to fight. But Sean O'Malley, this is a big fight for him. If he wins this, if Sean O'Malley can win this, does he kind of go in as a poster boy of UFC now, even though he does have everything out? They kind of use him as, hey, this is now somebody we really want to push?
Yeah. Oh, they really want to push him even before this. But if Sean O'Malley wins this, dare I say it, he enters Conor McGregor territory.
Okay.
Because just like Conor, he was kind of spoon-fed opponents. And like I said, he was kind of pointed out as the chosen one. And if he gets this title, he is entering that sphere. And God help us, if you're like me and you don't enjoy the smack talk as much, we're in for it if Sean O'Malley wins this one.
Yeah, no, it seems like everything is being set up, but Aljamain Sterling is just really fighting really well right now, and he's had that 893-day reign. So that should tell you anytime you start getting close to 4 digits on a title reign, it gets pretty impressive. If he beats Sean O'Malley, he handles his business, he wins the fight. Who's next in line for a shot at bantamweight?
Oh man, well the question is, will he ever be willing to fight his teammate and partner Merab Dvalishvili? And right now the answer is kind of no, but he is the number 1 ranked contender. But as teammates, they don't want to fight each other. He's already beaten Peter Yan at 5, Corey Sandhagen. It could be Chito Vera. Marlon Vera is opening up the pay-per-view at bantamweight against Pedro Munoz. So he is currently ranked number 6. So he could be next. But I get the feeling that after this fight, Sterling's going to take a vacation.
He's going to take a vacation?
Because he just fought in May. Yeah, he just fought in May. And most champions don't turn around this quickly. But the UFC is now basically a slave to its own schedule, and they needed a champion for this card, and they had him penciled in, or they had his belt penciled in for Boston this weekend.
Yeah.
And if he hadn't agreed to fight on this night, they would have made O'Malley an interim title shot.
Okay. So
and
now
Dana White would have been running him down so much.
Is this a thing too? Since O'Malley is such the teacher's pet for Dana White, is this a thing that if the fight is somewhat close, like if it goes to decision, if any of that happens, is there a chance that they just try and run this back?
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it. If it's really close, I wouldn't be surprised. And it's also in Boston.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say, the Massachusetts guys are, I'm not going to say they're not up on the up and up, but he is an O'Malley.
I'll just say that when Jack Harlow showed up at a Celtics game, all the other rappers had to tell him that rappers don't go to Boston. That rappers don't go to Boston games is what he was told. That will just say that. That should give you enough context to what we're talking about. Talking to Eddie Cross. Follow at Fight Night ATX and at Eddie Experience is how you can follow Eddie Cross. So what else is in the co-main event? You have a women's strawweight title bout. What's to watch for in that fight?
Oh, the co-main event might steal the show, dude. Zhang Weili is a 2-time strawweight champ. and she is just powerful everywhere. And this might be one of the first times, maybe in strawweight history, where both women have fight-changing power. The strawweight, it's 115 pounds. They're very small, especially after they cut weight. So both of them coming into the fight might weigh $1.25. Okay, so after they rehydrate.
Yeah.
But so usually at that size, you don't get fight-changing power. But both these ladies, Wiley and Amanda Lemos from Brazil, both of them have that kind of power. And this one could be a banger.
There you go. I know.
Yeah.
All right, so what other fights on this card would you say are the ones you got to watch?
That one, let's see. Like I said, Marlon Vera and Pedro Munoz opening up the pay-per-view. That one's going to be really good. But also, kind of in the middle of the main card, Ian Machado Gary versus Neil Magny. Ian Machado Gary, he's another one that is kind of earmarked for stardom. So he's from Ireland also. Nowhere near as annoying as Conor McGregor yet, but he's getting there.
He's not there yet, but
he's up against.
He's one of the guys that Dana White is telling, hey, if you get a little bit more obnoxious, you may get some more money in your fights.
And he's working on it, let me tell you. But he's facing Neil Magny, who is, you call him a journeyman, but he's, a few years back, I labeled him as my fighter of the year for winning 5 fights in 1 year.
Jeez.
Which, let me tell you, does not happen often at all.
No, that does not seem likely. That's one of those ones you're like, how many fights do you have? 7. Like, how many did you win? None. They just kept sending me back out there.
Yeah, but he is basically the gatekeeper of the division. I never fought for a title, but he will. You come up there too cocky, and he will knock you back down to size. So that one's kind of a prove-it fight for Ian Machado Gary. And then at the top of the prelim card, former middleweight champ Chris Weidman coming off a nasty broken leg.
Yeah, no, Nasty does not make 2 years. It's been over 2. He fought April of 2021. Basically
a toothpick leg break where your leg snaps in half there,
and then didn't heal right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, is he going to be able to? I mean, he's 39 years old, so he's already kind of on the back end of a career anyway. Is he going to be able to make any sort of comeback? Do you have any faith in him in this fight?
Not really. I mean, honestly, he wasn't doing that great before the leg break. He'd lost 3 out of 4.
Yeah.
And then let's see, 6 out of 8. So he wasn't doing well beforehand. But I think this is more of a I don't want to go out like that fight.
Yeah. Get one more win and try and walk away as a winner as opposed to, or at least just not be carted out of the ring.
Exactly. At least just show that you're still alive, you're still here, and you don't want that to be the last time people see you.
There you go. All right, we'll come back and we'll do some predictions at the end of the phone call. We got Eddie Cross from Fight Night ATX, at Fight Night ATX, and at Eddie X Experience to follow him. But let's talk about some other things happening in the MMA world. We know that John Jones basically came out today. Colby Covington came out and said that John Jones has knocked him off a card and said that John Jones will not fight on the same card. John Jones, of course, is, one of the biggest names in MMA right now. So he can pull his rank. Is when you have a fight like this, these guys aren't close to the same weight. This is not a fight that can ever happen in the MMA world.
No, it's not.
Because, I mean, it would have to.
There's a big backstory with those two.
No, and I get there's.
They were.
Go for it.
They were roommates in college. So they've probably seen each other at their worst because, when you know someone in college, you've got the best stories about them,
Yeah.
You've seen them at their best. You've seen them at their worst. You've seen them do the dumbest things possible that a 18, 19-year-old can do.
And if we've seen what Colby Covington does on TV on purpose and what John Jones gets reported in the news, I bet they do a bunch of dumb stuff.
Exactly. And Colby is saying John doesn't want him on the card because he's going to embarrass him in the press conferences. But let's just face it, Colby's a D-bag. And I don't think anyone really wants to be around him, period, especially when you're over here playing a part to hype yourself up. You're going to tear down anyone that's anyone in the area. So I wouldn't want him near me either.
So I'm a wrestling guy, and there's always this thing where you're not supposed to build up feuds that you can't ever make money on. It doesn't make sense. Right. And I just don't get this. And I think Colby Covington knows enough what he's doing to say, all right, I'll be able to do this. And, if I win, great. But even if I lose, I'll be able to keep getting fights for a while because people just want to see me lose. Or people want to see me win, if they're those people too. But these things, if you're Dana White, do you have to walk in and go, hey, man, no more, save that for the people you're fighting. I can't make any money off of you two arguing. It doesn't do me any good. Or do they do it where is this all setting up for a reality, one of the Ultimate Fighter shows?
No, the Ultimate Fighter they use, and they usually have a blow-off where the coaches face each other.
So they can't do that either.
That's not going to be useful in this case. I think this is one of those things that Dana can't control.
Yeah.
It's Colby hasn't been in the news much lately.
Okay.
He's supposed to have a welterweight title shot against Leon Edwards in London at some point, but they haven't signed it up officially yet. So I don't even know why he's bringing this up, considering that he's supposed to fight in London. Well, that's the plan, at least for now. So I don't know why it's even an issue.
No, I don't either.
But Colby hasn't been talked about in a while.
That makes the most sense, is that he just wants his name back in the news. Someone else who loves their name in the news, Conor McGregor. They're supposed to fight Michael Chandler. That came out this week that now they don't know if it's even going to happen this year. It may wait till next year because he's going to have to get an exemption because he's not going to do the drug testing. And what a surprise, he doesn't want to do the drug testing when he bulked up massively. Conor did. Is this fight ever going to happen, or is this just more hype from Conor McGregor to keep his name in the press as long as it can? But he's never going to do the testing. He's never going to get clean to do the fight. Wait, is this fight going to happen?
Man, that is a great question, because this is one situation that we haven't seen before, where someone that everyone's pretty sure has been using steroids when he quote-unquote retired to actually heal from his leg break.
Yeah.
Because, he got his leg snapped in half against Dustin Poirier. So everyone's pretty sure he allegedly, I got to put that in quotes, allegedly has been roiding up. But he's basically jumped up weight class.
Yeah.
He's just like the Conor McGregor version of Barry Bonds now.
Yeah, he looks like Mark McGuire when he was hitting all them home runs.
Yeah, you put his picture from 2 years ago and this picture now side by side. They look like a bigger brother, maybe.
It does. So
So everyone's kind of waiting on him to. I don't know if he's trying to cycle off and see for himself that he's clean before he gets to that testing pool. But if he wants to fight this year, there's definitely going to have to be an exception made by the UFC from their own policies, and they'll do it because it's Conor, and Dana doesn't really care about the rules.
Well, no,
he
and
just puts them in place for PR.
And that's the thing is Dana White is one of the alleged scummiest people on earth. But he knows, and this is, there's a class action suit that just recently was in the news that they gave it class certification of the lawsuit. It's been 8 years in the making of basically fighters saying Dana White has been screwing us out of money. You have Francis Ngannou who goes off and creates, which I love the name of it, gimmick fighting, because Dana White called it gimmick. With the names of, hey man, if we can become a star in UFC, we can maybe go off and do something else. And this class, is there going to be a change in UFC or MMA, or is Dana White and UFC basically just saying we can fight this off for the next 5-10 years? So why do we need to change anything?
They were definitely going to spend as much money as they can fighting it off. They're already lobbying Congress. They've been lobbying for years to keep this stuff down as it is. So they're not going to give up easily, even though it'll only cost them maybe $20 million a year.
But I mean, it's more about.
I don't want to get into numbers.
Well, no, it only matters. I'm talking more about the future of UFC and MMA. Is there going to be a point where they're going to have to start paying fighters a little bit more, or are fighters going to continue to try and walk away? Now we know Derek Lewis just came back, and he probably could have done something else, but it would have been a one and done. But he signs an 8-fight deal. Conor McGregor's still talking about doing stuff there. So a lot of guys are still doing stuff there. And Ngannou's the only one who really walked away. Do you think people are going to walk away more, or is this UFC understands how to keep their people?
If people do leave, it can only be at the highest level.
Yeah.
The people we're talking about, Conor, Francis Ngannou, Nate Diaz, who just fought Jake Paul for like $20 million.
Yep.
Those are the few people who can let their contract expire and go do something else. Pretty much everyone else, even Derek Lewis, he might have had a possibility of maybe facing Ngannou in the PFL with a pretty big guarantee. But I don't know for a fact, but I just know that Dana told him that if you do that, I'm not re-signing you ever.
Yeah. So
It's like one fight over here for a couple mil, or 8 fights over here where you could probably make maybe $8 million.
Yeah, and get the sponsorships and stretch it out for a lot longer and be in the eye and keep the sponsorship money for a little bit longer. No,
Exactly.
I get it.
So at some point they'll start paying them more, but
Not tomorrow.
Also, the other issue is that, yeah, definitely not tomorrow. Fighters also have this me against the world mentality where they think they can just do anything themselves, or they're so used to it being such a individual sport and doing everything themselves that when someone else tries to like get everyone together, if someone offers this guy over here more money than he's seen in forever, they're just going to take the fights over here. And there's no, no one calls fighters scabs for breaking the picket line.
That's true.
There's no such thing.
Yeah, everybody is their own person. Talking to Eddie
They're
Cross.
gonna come together themselves.
We're talking to Eddie Cross from Fight Night. You can follow Fight Night at Fight Night ATX, and you can follow Eddie at Eddie Experience with the letter X. Eddie Experience is where you can find it. Eddie, before we let you go, give us a pick or two that people can really pick and feel good about for the fight tomorrow for UFC 292.
Oh, man. If you got $20 you never want to see again, I would put it on Aljamain Sterling to beat Sean O'Malley.
Okay.
It's a classic striker versus grappler matchup, and Sterling is a great wrestler, great jiu-jitsu fighter, and O'Malley just has to miss one before Sterling is all over him, dragging him to the ground and jumping on his back. So my money would be on Sterling. If you look at the co-main event with the women, Weili Zhang is tough, man. I would put money on her in a heartbeat, facing anyone except Rose Namajunas.
Yeah, and I love that one. Apparently is even odds as well. So I like both those picks. Eddie Cross, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure we'll have you on again when we get some more good MMA news happening. Appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, my pleasure, Pat.
Eddie Cross there. You can follow him at Eddie Experience and at Fight Night ATX is where to follow them to keep up with all your UFC news. When we come back, we will talk about our big fat poll of the day. Which Longhorn freshman will have the biggest impact this season? You can text us in 512-337-3776. That's how you can join in the conversation. We'll be right back to read some of your text right here on the Sports Complex, 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and at hornfm.com. Back at the Sports Complex on a 512 Friday. Playing you some Dangerous Toys. Dangerous Toys is going to be Come and Take It live tomorrow night. I know they've kind of been Dallas, Austin. I know the guys live here now because I see him around town. You see Jason McMaster running around, one of the nicest guys you'll meet in rock and roll, Jason McMaster. Dangerous Toys there playing tomorrow night at Come and Take It Live. If you want to go check out an awesome rock show, remember you the good old days, go check that out. We're asking about the big fat poll of the day today. Which Longhorn freshman will have the biggest impact this season? You guys can join the conversation, 512-337-3776. I gave you plenty of options. There's plenty of freshmen who could make an impact. Now, a lot of these guys may not really play that much, but some of them are. We get an Arch Manning. I'm hoping Arch Manning doesn't play. Because if Arch Manning plays, it means that things have gone wrong for Texas. It means that Quinn Ewers wasn't playing at a high level. It means Malik Murphy probably wasn't playing at a high level. We may have gone through 2 quarterbacks or 2 injuries. I don't want to think about either one of those things. So I'm hoping it's not him. I'm hoping he has an amazing redshirt freshman or sophomore. I hope he plays very well when he gets in the opportunity. We had a toss-up between Anthony Hill and Jonte Cook. Hill on defense, Cook on offense. I think Anthony Hill is definitely somebody that people are really thinking is going to be able to get some playing time at linebacker. And if he's able to step it up and make some impact there, he'll be getting more and more playing time, kind of filling in that Overshawn role and what he can do there. And Jonte Cook, we just know, Sark loves a good wide receiver. We know what Xavier Worthy did his freshman year. Now, he didn't have nearly as much competition. A.D. Mitchell's there and, Jordan Whittington, Xavier. But I still think he could have some. And we had this Cook playing wide receiver and returning punts. If he's a return man, too, definitely gives you some options. Colton Vasek, I have a feeling that Colton Vasek, this texter, may be a Westlake person. I don't know. But look, the edge rushing for Texas hasn't been great. Colton Vasek could step in, and if he takes it to another level, I don't know if he's ready to go. I haven't heard a ton of talk about him being ready to make a week 1 impact. And, there are some other guys this D-line continues to grow. We got, what's the name of the song by the Giant Dog? They're playing tonight at the Parish doing their CD release. That song was called different than their new album is called Bite, if you want to check that out. Another one for Anthony Hill. You can join the conversation, 512-337-3776, to let us know who you think is going to be, which Longhorn freshman will have the biggest impact this season. We'll take some of your answers, put them up on a poll, and we'll put that up on social media when we get off the air. Here, we're off at 6:30 for Texas Rangers baseball. Sorry about that. Texas Rangers baseball at 6:30. So we're going to come back. We're going to play some Sark audio getting ready for the second scrimmage of spring football that is happening this Saturday. Here's some Sark audio. We'll be playing that when we come back here on the Horn, 1019 AM 1260, hornfm.com, and the Horn app. Hour 2 here on the Sports Complex. Got a few more minutes with you until we give you up for the Rangers pregame show. They're taking on the Brewers on a big series. It's not as big as the Astros series, but the Rangers, every series is big as we get later into the season. And the Brewers, a above 500 team. So it is going to be a big series for them to keep up pace. And they understand either the Mariners or Astros is going to lose some games this weekend. So if they can, or they're able to sweep the Brewers, the Rangers move a little bit further ahead. So these wins could be big. This could be a big weekend whenever you have two guys that are behind you playing each other. Of course, the Astros taking on the Seattle Mariners this weekend. They're about 3.5 games back from the Rangers. They're about 3.5 games in front of the Mariners, the Astros are. So to see where those teams end up, we'll get to there. Sark Sound. We asked you guys on the Big Fat Poll of the day, which freshman for the Longhorns will have the biggest impact this season? And I'm saying true freshman, too. True freshman. We've got some answers there if you want to join the conversation. 512-337-3776. That is the Specs text line. And here is Sark giving a little bit on the freshmen and how they're developing so far. Sark spoke to the media today before the second scrimmage. Here's Sark on the freshmen, since we're asking you about the freshmen.
You know, I think the one thing about this class in general, I think it's very competitive. I think these guys are a competitive group. They play hard, they go hard, and I think that's a credit to the coaches too, of instilling that in those guys to go. But I also think it's a credit to our older players because they've understood how we like to practice. And so I think it's made it a little bit easier for the young guys to be like, oh, this is how we work, and they've been going for it. And so I do think there's a lot of quality players in the class. You know, time will tell how much, you know, they impact the game when we get to the games. Obviously, some more than others, but that doesn't mean over time. And we look back at this class, you know, 3-4 years from now, you know, hopefully there's a lot of production, whether it's at the line of scrimmage, on offense or defense, you know, in playmaking ability and things of that nature. But I think up to this point, I've been very pleased with what this class has brought.
There's the reason why I asked the Big Fat Poll of the day today, was Sark saying this is a competitive class. This class wants to make an impact, and he says some more than others could make an impact this season. So that is why we're asking the question on the Specs text line, 512-337-3776, which Texas freshman will have the biggest impact this season. But we're not to the season yet. I know. I can't wait either. I can't wait for football either, but we are on our second scrimmage. And Sark was asked today, what is different between the first scrimmage and the second scrimmage? We know he said earlier the first scrimmage is kind of just working things out. Here's what Sark had to say the difference on the scrimmage from first to second to know what reports you can expect coming out this weekend and on Monday.
A couple different kind of scenarios that we want to get better at, that we want to work on. Some of the substitution things, game-like substitutions where you're rolling situations as they come, whether it's low red zone, then you got to go to goal line, then you go for two. There's a lot of substitutions that have to happen there, and getting those mechanics done from the sidelines in the moment, things like that we'll work on top of playing the game, you know, and really working the game, whether it's the 2-minute scenarios, you know, third, fourth down type work there, which I thought we did a good job of last week, but because of how big it is in college football right now, I want to make sure we're really dialed on that. So it'll look probably very similar, but there's going to be little things along the way that will be different.
So not too much different. He did say last week, week 2 is where you get into more, where you start to look at the depth chart. Week 3 is going to be much more of a depth chart week, I believe, but week 2 of scrimmages is a little bit more of a depth chart week of, all right, let's see if this, let's start comparing apples and oranges. Let's start comparing apples and apples. Let's start comparing these DBs and see, all right, let's put this guy in this situation, and we'll put Malik Muhammad here, and you know, we'll put somebody, and we can have a competition to see if who's going to be able to take that spot, who's going to be at the next stop, the next stop. Even a freshman, if you say Anthony Hill or Leon Lafau, and you say, okay, let's kind of put them in similar situations and see how they react, and see which one of them we may put on our depth chart above. So we're not putting together a real depth chart yet. But we are starting to say, okay, I think this guy's better in this situation, this guy's better in this situation. And speaking of situations and turnovers, Sark was asked about how do you root for a team when there's turnovers Are you rooting for the offense to never have a turnover? Or are you rooting for the defense to get turnovers? How do you judge in a scrimmage against yourself? How do you, how you react to certain different, inevitabilities of a game? And here's what Sark had to say to give a little bit more insight of how you can break apart when, the report is so-and-so threw 3 interceptions or so-and-so, we heard that you never hear anybody throws the interception. You may not hear that, but you hear that the Texas defense picked off the ball or got some fumbles. Here's how Sark had to take the turnovers and situations and scrimmages.
I like both sides of the ball. Obviously when you run 130 plays, you're going to have some turnovers. It's how those turnovers occurred is what I'm trying to clean up. Like I said, I thought the defense had a really good segment in the third down, fourth down portion of it last week, which is important for us. Obviously, we've got to clean up the quarterback scramble things, and then the red area, which I thought the offense was relatively effective last week. So you're always working on both, and in the end, it's can we adhere to the task at hand when the moment calls for it, and that's what I'm trying to figure out, not only collectively but individually, of how guys respond. What's the communication like in those scenarios when they come up?
So this is the very diplomatic answer first, and then still somewhat diplomatic at the end. But we're not so much worried about if you throw 130 passes, if you make 130 plays, there's going to be turnovers in them. But we want to see how the defense reacts when they do get a turnover, how they are able to bounce back up, how they're able to get back on the field quickly, and how this offense reacts to maybe a pass that bounces off of a wide receiver's hands or a running back's hands or a tight end's hands. Whatever it is. And the ball bounces off and it's a pick, but it's not the quarterback's fault. How does that quarterback react to that? Because we saw Quinn last year not necessarily have the best body language at all times. He tried to correct it when it got to the bowl game, and he tried to correct a lot of things. He was thrown into a situation where I don't think he was fully ready for the big spotlight of being a starting quarterback because it was such a long layoff and such a stark difference of you're third string, not going to see the ball at Ohio State. You're, taking a year off from college or from high school, basically. So such a long stretch between when he last was playing, even just on Friday Night Lights, to being on the stage, playing at DKR, playing on the road in the Big 12. I don't know if he was fully ready for that, but a lot of guys aren't. It just takes time. He seems better at that. So one of those situations you look at for a Quinn Ewers or for an Archer Malik is you're going to look at when that pass goes out and it may not be yours, or maybe your wide receiver pulled up on one. Maybe maybe something happened. What is their reaction going to be? Or if a wide receiver gets overthrown, are they going to run back to the line of scrimmage and go, let's go hit the next play? Those kind of things is what he's saying they're going to look at this scrimmage as well, to make sure that you're ready for who's ready to play at this level, who understands the assignment, versus who's trying to make an impact in a scrimmage, because we're scrimmaging, and you have to know the difference. We want you to play hard. What Dan Quinn said earlier, sometimes you got to push yourself to find the edge. You want to do all that. But you also want to be aware of what the situations are in these games. Sark also was asked about the O and D line, that how can you judge this O line starting off with a D line that is getting so much praise? And it's a similar kind of question. It's offense versus defense. You're scrimmaging yourself, but does it O and D line, does that help each other grow if you're playing against good O-line and good D-line?
Okay, so I think the interior defensive line is playing really well, and we've got some really good players in there. Obviously, when you start talking about Byron Murphy, Sweat, what he provides. Alfred's playing at a high level. I think Jeray Bledsoe has stepped up. Vernon, definitely explosive in there. So there's a variety of guys in there. And inevitably that's great for the offensive line. You want to go against really good people every day. You want to get pushed. My goal is that when we kick the ball off in real games, that we're playing at a high level. And to do that, we have to make it competitive. We have to make sure that our receivers are taxing our secondary. We got to make sure that the linebackers are rushing really good so that the runners learn to pass protect. We got to make sure that, our tight ends are a problem, not only in the run game, and the pass game. So it all kind of flows and works together. And there's going to be moments and days when, one side has the advantage over the other. And I think that's happened up front. We've had days we ran the ball well and been really effective, and other days, that defensive line's had their moments too. And that's the beauty of having a good team, and a team that's balanced on both sides of the ball, that they can push one another and raise each other's level of play as the days go.
It's that iron sharpens iron. Big point of a lot of coaches. Iron sharpens iron. With Texas, we know that O-line and D-line play needs to improve this year, and it needs to be on a path to where it's going to be with Kyle Flood, with Bo Davis, with PK, with everybody. It needs to be pushed forward, because going to the SEC, that line play on both sides needs to be at an almost elite level for you to be able to compete for an SEC championship. And you need to do it right now in the Big 12. That the Big 12, they're not necessarily respecting you in some of these polls of putting Kelvin Banks as first team, not necessarily respecting that this O-line could be something special. And if you're getting bullied in practice, that's fine, because it's going to help you learn better of how to project yourself and how to play at a higher level. Now, I will also say something that I've harped on a lot is the running back room for this Texas team, because I know they have the talent in this running back room, but I also know Sark is not necessarily going to give this running back room a ton of chances to prove itself. Someone's going to have to take the reins for this running back room, in my opinion. That I know he wants to put running backs in certain situations, but the more you allow Sark to pick his situations, it's going to be more and more pass plays, and it's going to be little drop-off screens, and not necessarily trying to really pound the rock to a point to build consistency, to build up a run game in the first half that you can then use in the second half, that you've beat on this D-line, that the O-line can really beat ahead and just push ahead on guys, not just playing pass protection, which is a little bit harder to do for an O-line for most people. You want to be able to have that running back. Jonathan Brooks, we know, can do it. We know he has the physical ability. We know he's talented enough, has enough football IQ to do it. We know they have multiple guys. We know C.J. Baxter can probably do it. We don't know if he's there yet, but here's Sark talking about the running back room, and what he says at the end gets me the most.
No, we're not there yet. I think that, to be fair to those guys, they need another day tomorrow. I do know this: we got plenty of guys that can play, and that's a positive. But I look for a lot of different things. Like today, we had a heavy 2-minute situation where how do guys respond in that scenario? And what does that look like? What do they look like on the goal line and in short yardage? What do they look like on regular downs? What do they look like in third down and pass protection? So inevitably, who are the best at what, and then maybe early on, that's how we kind of have to play them some. Or if one guy's better at 3 of the 4, hey, then it makes life a little easier. But that's what we're trying to figure.
There you go. One guy is better at 3 of the 4. So you need one guy to come out and start killing. And again, Jonathan Brooks, this is his position to take. This is his position, and I don't want to say his position to lose. I want to say it's his to take, because I want Jonathan Brooks to come and take this position. And we heard him talk. We played some audio from him earlier in the week. He's young, and he's trying to do the right thing. But I need him to have just a little bit more ego to say, no, this is my running back room. I waited behind Bijan and Roschon. I waited behind. I did my thing, but I saw Roschon Johnson. I saw him. He was a team guy and team first all the time, but he wasn't going to allow Bijan Robinson to take every single carry, even though Bijan Robinson's the best running back in the country, arguably. Roschon's still going to get his. And I need Jonathan Brooks to say, no, I'm getting mine. And we'll see once we get into the season if he can take that extra step of that extra competitiveness, that extra aggression. Can he take that forward? But that's what I want to see out of a Jonathan Brooks. And if he can't do it, if he doesn't have that, I want to see C.J. Baxter pushing him as hard as he can. Because I think it's Jonathan Brooks. I think when you talk about doing 3 out of the 4, I don't know if Jonathan Brooks, I haven't seen his receiving game enough. I know he can catch the ball, but I haven't seen enough if he's got the route down and he can get enough separation and he can do quite what Keelan Robinson can do in the receiving game. But if his pass protection is looking really good, and if he can run through the O-line and just run up the middle, and then he can be elusive on the outside, and he can read the defense, and if he can do all of those things, and he can play on special teams, and he can do everything he wants to do, then Jonathan Brooks is the guy. But I need to see him have a little bit more ego and again, I'm not there every day. So I can't tell you, maybe he does. But that's what I want to see out of him when the season starts. I want to see him every single play that he is not in right there on the sideline ready to go. I don't want to see him sitting down. I want to see him ready to check back into that game at all time, because I want to see somebody who understands, man, I think I want to be playing for a Heisman next year or the year after. I want to be in that conversation. I know quarterbacks win the Heisman. I know it. But I think he needs to be in the position of, I want to be competing at that level. I want to be considered a guy that can be, drafted in the first round. I want to make Mel Kiper furious. That's what I want to do. And I want to see that out of him. He's still young. He's got a lot of fire, but we know what he can do. We just need to see if he's able to push it all together and fight off any other competitors for his spot and become the main running back. And when C.J. Baxter inevitably gets in, because you want to do running back by committee to points, you want to draw up plays that certain guys are better at. But at the same point, I want him on the sideline waiting to get back in. At this scrimmage, I want him 100% invested all of the plays, because he should feel like any single play you call, I should be in on that play. That's what I want from Jonathan Brooks. I'm going to play one more clip real quick about Sark talking about his man, Jeff Banks. Here's Sark talking about Jeff Banks, a secret weapon that Texas has that I think more people are starting to figure out.
Well, I think there's two things. One, he puts in the time and the effort. We're very organized. He's got a real plan. I think he does a really good job of fitting our personnel to the scheme and getting the right people in the right spots to do what they do really well. I think he does a nice job of recognizing players that may not be always frontline starters, but play with a style on special teams where they can find a role. Keaton Crawford and Mo Blackwell, the guys of that nature. And then inevitably, I love kind of the attitude that he brings and the aggressiveness, because I think that's half of special teams. You got to have players that want to be on teams. And I think Jeff creates an environment where our guys want to be on special teams. They love what he brings. They love the energy. They love the fact that we're going to scheme people, but yet he's going to demand maximum effort every time that we go. And I think you tie it all together with his organization. I think that's why he's really good at what he does.
The secret weapon there for Texas, Jeff Banks. I'm telling you, that guy with his recruiting, what he's got these guys believing in special teams, secret weapon, Jeff Banks. Chan, I see you on the line. We need 2 steady backs. I don't disagree with you, but I want those 2 steady backs to not just be okay with sharing the load. I want them to push each other to try and be the back. That's what I want to see. I want to see them both try and be the best back. But I agree with you, Chan. We do need 2, because one's not enough in today's college football. Thank you so much for everybody joining us today. We're going to give you up for the Texas Rangers pregame show here at 6:30. Appreciate all you playing along. Make sure to follow us on our social medias. You can follow me at It's Patrick Davis. We'll keep up with you all weekend long. And we'll be right back here on Monday. But until then, be kind to each other. Keep yourself safe. Keep your underwear clean. And we will see you Monday right here on the Sports Complex on the Horn.